Okay, it started.
Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedamscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamhadevam Atma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha, Gurave Sarvalokanam, Bhishaje Bhavaroginam, Nidhaye Sarvavidyanam, Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Okay, so last week we saw the 20 qualities given in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita under the title of Jnanam. And today we had planned to cover the Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, first 3 shlokas, where Bhagavan Krishna talks about some 26 virtues, 26 qualities under the title of Daivi Sampat. Daivi Sampat being translated as divine qualities or godlike qualities. Okay, but before we go there, are there any questions from the previous week? Anything that has been on top of anybody's mind? Anyone? Okay. So nobody seems to have any questions. So I'll straight away move on to the 16th chapter. So if any of you have Bhagavad Gita with you, either in paper form or online, you can go to the 16th chapter, the first 2.5 shlokas. The first 2.5 shlokas, 2 shlokas plus the first line of the third shloka is what I am going to be talking about. So the shlokas begin like this: Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhihi Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi Danam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhyaya Tapa Arjavam. That is one shloka. Ahimsa Satyam Akrodha Tyaga Shanti Rapaishunam Daya Bhuteshvaloluptvam Mardavam Hrirachapalam. That's the second shloka. Tejah Kshama Dhritihi Shaucham Adroho Nati Manita. That is the third shloka, first line. So all these 5 lines together provide a list of some 26 qualities. Some of these qualities are already part of the 20 that we discussed last week. So there will be a lot of overlap, not lot of, but some overlap. With that short background, we go into the qualities one by one. Abhayam. The first quality is Abhayam. Bhayam means fear. So Abhayam means freedom from fear. And we can generally translate this idea as courage. Courage. And you don't have to have a fear only from some mortal danger. Even in day-to-day normal situations, people have the fear of standing up and talking. Very simple. Yeah. So generally this fear is a manifestation of lack of confidence, lack of self-confidence. So in a way, you can also take it that Krishna wants us to develop self-confidence. Yes, Shubhu ma'am, you raised your hand.
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm which chapter was that?
16th.
16th. Okay.
Yeah.
And the shlokas were number
1, 2, and part of 3. First line of 3.
Thanks. I had gone to get it. Thank you. Sorry.
Right. Okay. So courage, self-confidence, you can interpret it the way you want. Basically, what is the importance of abhayam? In life, pursuit of anything, you may want to be the tennis champion or the chess champion or whatever, or you may want to become a millionaire. There could be multiple goals in life. And of course, in this group, we are talking about spiritual travel, spiritual pursuit. All these pursuits require a consistent effort over a long period of time. And when somebody is in that journey, there could be a lot of obstacles that one would face, even sometimes people discouraging you or asking you why are you doing this and so on. People create doubt, self doubt in you. In all those situations where either you are you know pulled down by self doubt, or sometimes you are physically tired that you don't feel like doing anything, or there are people around you who are giving you negative thoughts and they are questioning you, discouraging you. In all these situations, it is important that you overcome all those obstacles and continue to be on the path that you are pursuing. So that requires a lot of mental strength, which Krishna is here calling abhayam, bhayam. So very often we do a lot of things to seek approval from others. That also is a manifestation of lack of self confidence, which you can call as some kind of a bhayam, even though it may not really be uh, yeah, bhayam may be a very strong word for it, but you are always saying, okay, will this be approved by my friends? Will somebody approve this? Will somebody disapprove this? All those questions come. So once you are clear about the value that you are pursuing, you go on the journey, no matter what others might say, and no matter what obstacles might come. Suddenly, you may be taken down by illness or some kind of a difficult period emotionally, and then you may feel like giving up on something. In those kind of situations, persisting, that perseverance, persistence is also what this abhayam talks about. We saw another place, or maybe we're going to see somewhere, Thairyam. Thairyam was in the previous 20 list. The 13th chapter list was Thairyam. So you can combine this Thairyam and Abhayam. Thairyam, I said that, it is again persistence and perseverance, being steadfast in what you are pursuing. So you can connect Abhayam to Thairyam of the previous week. So that is Abhayam. Courage, self-confidence, all those things. Then Sattva Samshuddhi. The word Sattva here means the mind, because the mind is made of the Sattva guna of Prakriti. So Sattvam here means the mind. Sattva Samshuddhi means the purity of the mind. And I did talk about Chitta Shuddhi in a general sense in one of the earlier sessions. So you can say Chitta Shuddhi is a very generic term. Sattva Samshuddhi is actually developing positive attitude in the mind, avoiding negative thoughts, uh, you know, avoiding things like anger, disappointment, and having a positive attitude, positive outlook, and also a benevolent attitude towards others. You know, making sure that whatever you think about, whatever you pursue, is good and pure. So all those things, it's you can think of cleanliness in very different ways. Basically, having a clean mind means a pure mind, devoid of negative qualities and negative attitudes and all those. So sattva samshuddhi, because that's very important. If you fill your mind with lot of useless things and negative things, then there is no room for positive things and good things to come. And the spiritual journey is a very long journey where you have to learn quite a lot and assimilate and understand a lot of things. And so your mind has to be available to receive the teachings, and if your mind is occupied with a lot of you know negative and impure or dirty things, then you will not have an aptitude or an openness for the Vedantic and the Vedic teachings. So it's over a time you might develop a taste, a mental taste that is taking you away from spirituality. And that's true with any pursuit. If when you want to focus your mind on something, you have to take away all the thoughts which are not related to your focus. Okay, and in that sense we are talking here about a focus on spirituality. And in spirituality, having a clean mind, a pure mind, is very, very important, because we are talking about values, and we are we are trying to inculcate values into ourselves. It's what somebody else might call a re-engineering. This is actually a kind of a re-engineering project. You are kind of re-engineering yourself. So that is sattva samshuddhi. Then jnana yoga vyavasthitihi. Jnana yoga vyavasthitihi, you can say this is the pursuit of the Vedantic study itself. And so my teacher, my guru says jnana yoga is basically shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. I have used these three words also in one of the earlier sessions. That is jnana yoga. Shravanam means consistent and systematic study of the Vedantic scriptures for a length of time from a traditional living guru. When I say traditional, coming from a sampradaya. Okay, maybe this is a definition that is worth writing down. Like long back, I requested you to write down some of the definitions. So maybe you can write this down. If you want, I can repeat it once again. Shravanam, 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 literally translated, it just means listening. But listening to what? It is the listening of the teaching from a guru. In our Shastras, you don't learn Vedanta by reading books. Vedanta is always learnt from a guru's mouth. It's always an oral tradition. And so listening is a very important step, and that's why Shravanam is very important. It is the consistent and systematic study of the Vedantic scriptures for a length of time under the guidance of a traditional living acharya. Okay, can someone repeat what I said from the notes? No one?
Yes, Shravanam is learning the Vedanta principle from a living acharya, from a tradition or a sampradaya.
Yeah, but the word consistent and systematic over a length of time, these are very important words.
Yes, yes.
Because you may listen to some lecture from somebody in 1975, and then some other lecture from somebody else in 1987, and over a period you have some pieces of knowledge that is not Vedantic study.
Yes.
Yeah, so consistent and systematic study over a length of time is the operative word.
Yeah.
Okay. Shubhuji, you raised your hand.
I just wanted to repeat it. Listening consistent and systematic study of Vedanta scriptures under the guidance of a traditional living acharya over a length of time.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so that's very important to remember. And mananam is the next step after Shravanam. So whatever you learn in Shravanam, those teachings may trigger a lot of doubts in you. So there are intellectual obstacles. You don't you don't think this makes sense. You have learned something, but you think it doesn't make sense. So you ask questions. How is this? How is that? Why is it not like this? Why should it be like this? All those questions. And you can ask this question to your teacher also. You can ask the question with other students if you have a group of students, and basically get into a discussion, and over a period you strengthen your learning. So you're convinced intellectually about what you have learned. That is the process of mananam. And then nididhyasanam is to use that knowledge to bring about a transformation in your character and behavior. That is nididhyasanam. So there are basically 3 steps in jnana yoga. And so in this particular context, jnana is shravanam mananam, yoga is nididhyasanam. So jnana yoga together represents shravanam mananam nididhyasanam. Vyavasthitihi means a commitment, a strong commitment to go through jnana yoga. That is the jnana yoga vyavasthitihi. So that means attending some kind of a Vedantic class. It could be Bhagavad Gita class, it could be Upanishads class, it could be Viveka Chodamani class, it could be any of those classes which somebody is conducting over a long period, listening to those lectures and understanding the concepts and being at it until you are completely convinced. That is Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti, a strong commitment to Vedantic studies. That is Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti. Then Dhanam. Now, Dhanam basically means charity, giving. And in our scriptures, Dhanam is a very central element, even in the Karma Kanda. Forget about Jnana Kanda, we are talking about Upanishads, Jnana Kanda, where we are talking about learning Vedanta. But even before you come to Vedanta, Dhanam is a very important concept. And in all our, festivals and rituals, the aspect of Dhanam is embedded. When you celebrate any festival, we buy a new dress, and very often on some occasions you do donation of dress, or you do annadanam. Yeah. And yeah, what else? In when somebody is when somebody is dead, and the what is called the funeral rituals are performed, there also a lot of dhanam is given. You give a lot of money, you give godanam, you are supposed to donate a cow, you give swarna danam, swarna danam is donating gold. So all these are already embedded in our rituals and festivals. Why is dhanam important? So dhanam can be explained from very many different angles. Okay, the first angle is, all of us come with a certain inbuilt quality, which can be described as greed, lobha. That means all of us have an inbuilt insecurity, and we think that insecurity can be taken care of, can be addressed if we cling on to our external possessions. So to address our insecurity, we tend to accumulate more and more material possessions and cling on to them. And that is basically not a very healthy thing, because if everybody is grabbing, then there'll be nothing left in this world. So to dissuade the individual from this tendency to grab everything and hold on to oneself, the Shastras say you have to learn to give and to learn to share. That is one aspect. And the second is, if everybody is grabbing, then it becomes a competition, and it will lead to some kind of an inequality of unequal distribution of wealth in the society, which will create societal problems. So by voluntarily giving our wealth to those who are in need, we are contributing to the shall we say, reduction of inequality in the society when it comes to matters of wealth. So this is some kind of a socialism built into our Sanatana Dharma. Okay, we don't call it socialism, but it has a very far-reaching implication. This is just one aspect of it. Yeah, that social inequality has to be reduced to the extent possible, and the best way to do it is for the haves to voluntarily part with their possessions rather than somebody coming and snatching it from them. Yeah, that's one aspect of it. Then the third aspect is it is considered a prayaschitta karma. It is considered as a prayaschitta karma in the sense dhanam is supposed to help us tide over some of our papam which we might have in our prarabdha karma. So it is considered a very effective prayaschitta karma, and the most important spiritual reason for dhanam is, ultimately all of us have to give up everything including our body. This body we are given for a certain period in this life. At the end of this life we are going to leave this body also, and as we leave the body we are going to leave everything that we have earned in our lifetime behind. And if we have been giving in the form of dhanam throughout our life, it makes our last few minutes, that last separation from the body, that much less painful. Okay, so these are all some of the considerations for elevating dhanam to be a very high virtue. So whatever be it, learning to give, at least to start with, learning to give away what we don't need, that's a good starting point. Forget about giving what we want to have, that is a different step. But initially if we look around us, we'll have a lot of stuff which we really don't need, and we can give it away without any adverse effect on our way of life. At least if we can practice that, it's a good starting point. So that is dhanam. Then damaha. So damaha has already been covered, I think, in one of the earlier lectures, maybe not as the 20 virtues in the 13th chapter, but I think we covered damaha as part of sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, shamadhi shatka sampatti and all that. So there we have shama, dama, titiksha, shraddha and all that. So there's the same dama here. It means sense control, and sense control is necessary because if you want to focus on something, you have to have as less distraction as possible. If you don't have sense control, you can get easily distracted, so you can't focus on Vedanta. So from that very simple point of view, dhamma is important, and dhamma builds character over a period. Yeah, so that is dhamma. We'll probably see more dhamma when we talk about sadhana chatushtaya sampatti in a later session. Again, then ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence, avoidance of violence. This was also discussed in the last week's virtue of 20. It was number 3 there. Amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa. So ahimsa came pretty much high on the list last week. It is the same ahimsa. You have ahimsa at the thought level, ahimsa at the verbal level, ahimsa at the action level, not hurting others. All that is ahimsa. And yeah, so ahimsa we have covered. Then satyam. No, after ahimsa, sorry, I think I skipped quite a bit. Damaha, yajnaha. So the next was yajnaha. Dhanam, damascha, yajnascha. Yajnaha. Now, yajnaha basically means to worship. Yajnaha means worship. And we talk about 2 types of worship. One is a formal worship in the form of prayer, where you light a lamp and offer flowers and offer some naivedyam, offer some agarbatti, all that you do in your own puja ghar, or you go to a temple and do it. So all that is formal prayer, which you can call yajna. And the other yajna is to perform your duty with the attitude of karma yoga, which we already talked about fairly elaborately in the last 2-3 sessions, not the previous week, but the few weeks before that. So karma yoga, it was already explained that it has two parts again. The action, when you perform as though you are doing a puja, you are offering to the Lord, offering to the Ishvara, and when you receive the result of your action, you accept the result as Ishvara Prasada. That is Karma Yoga. And as part of the Karma Yoga, we also discussed the Pancha Maha Yajna. We talked about Deva Yajna, Brahma Yajna, Pitri Yajna, Manava Yajna, and Bhuta Yajna. So these ideas have already been discussed fairly elaborately. So I don't want to repeat all that. So when you talk of Yajna, you can remember both. And there also the formal prayer is actually part of what we call Brahma Yajna, Brahma Yajna, Deva Yajna, and Pitri Yajna. They are also formal prayers. Yeah. So that is Yajna. Then Swadhyaya. Now Swadhyaya is a very specific form of Brahma Yajna. Brahma Yajna itself is learning the scriptures, and Swadhyaya is a is an activity that has a lot of focus on Brahma Yajna, on having a lot of focus on understanding the scriptures, not just learning the chanting, but also to learn the meaning. Okay, so if you learn to chant something, we have the word Parayanam for that. And so Parayanam, of course, even learning the meaning is a kind of Parayanam, but learning the meaning is actually a deeper performance of Brahma Yajna. So the more you learn to chant, the more you will have the interest to know what is it that I'm chanting. So what does this mean? And that will trigger your curiosity, and you will eventually try to learn the meaning also. So that is Swadhyaya. You can take it as some kind of a very specific focused Brahma Yajna. Yeah. Then Tapaha. Tapaha is the voluntary, voluntarily undergoing physical discomfort, voluntarily undergoing physical discomfort in order to develop a certain resilience and toughness. That could be a physical toughness, it could be a mental toughness, eventually leading to more tolerance and more, what can you say, tolerance in terms of able to sustain pain. Let me put it that way. You undertake pain voluntarily so that you become toughened physically and mentally. That is tapas. And all our vratams, if you go and look at all those vratams, they are all in one way or the other inflicting some kind of physical pain on yourself. If you are fasting, let's say you are fasting for from morning to evening, or fasting for the whole day, Ekadashi Vrat, or Somvar Vrat, or Shanivar Vrat, or some people do very recently you had Karwa Chauth. I don't know how many of you actually celebrate Karwa Chauth. There are similar festivals around the year. Some people fast on Shivratri day, some people fast for 9 days during Navratri, and then on Shivratri you go without sleep, or on Vaikuntha Ekadashi you go without sleep, all those things, or even undertaking some yatra. Very recently, I think there was a yatra that happened in Maharashtra. People walk all the way to Pandharpur, yeah, or in Bihar and UP, there was this Kavadi yatra that was happening. Or if you go to the south, people go to Shabarimalai, and in Shabarimalai, the yatra actually begins with a 48-day vrat. So for 48 days, the men folk are supposed to undergo very rigorous, you know, what we call tapas only, vratam tapas, yeah. So they're supposed to take bath twice, very early in the morning and in the evening. They're supposed to eat only once in the day. They're supposed to walk without chappal. They're supposed to sleep on the bare floor without any cushion. All that they do for 48 days. They are not supposed to shave for 48 days. And then at the end of that vrat, they pack their offerings to Lord Ayyappa, and then they go to the Shabarimala where the forest begins, and then they walk through the forest without chappal and all that. They have to walk for 2.5 days. It's a distance of about 48 kilometers in some very hilly areas, and then they finally go to the temple and they offer the ghee they carry as abhishekam to Lord Ayyappa. That's a Shabarimala ritual. So people from the south are probably aware of it. So all these, similar yatras you undertake to go to Kedarnath or Badrinath, or we have so many places all over India, and people undertake yatra. And in those days, back some 300-400 years back, going to Kashi required you to walk all the way, to walk to Kashi. There was no bus or train those days, so one had to walk, and you had to walk for maybe 6 months. So all those are actually physical hardships that you bring upon yourself, and so this is tapas. So basically, it toughens you physically and mentally. Yeah. So that is tapas. Arjavam. We have talked about arjavam in the last week's list also. Arjavam means an integrated personality, developing integrity. So your thought, words, and action are aligned completely. And there is a shloka which says, manasyekam vachasyekam karmanyekam mahatmanam vachasyanyat manasyanyat karmanyanyat duratmanam. Vachasyekam manasyekam karmanyekam means vachas, manas is the thought, vachas, vak, is the word, and karmani is the deed. So for the good people, for the noble people, the thoughts, the words, and the action are identical. What they say, they do. What they think, they say. So there is no double speak. Whereas duratmanam, for the not so good people, manasyanyat, vachasyanyat, karmanyanyat. Anyat means something else. So they think something, they talk something else, and they do something completely different. So that is the people with bad character. So this is there available in the Subhashitani. Subhashitani, it's a compilation of small slokas which give good moral values. So this is one of the Subhashitani. Anyway, so Arjavam basically means you have an integrated, harmonized personality, and you treat everyone with fairness, and you are honest and straightforward. And I think we did talk about Arjavam in a fairly elaborate way last week, so I'm not repeating it. Then we talked about Ahimsa. Ahimsa also was covered last week. Then Satyam. Satyam, even though it is translated as truth, this is basically avoidance of telling untruth. We translate Satyam as avoidance of untruth, because if you're going to talk the truth, There's so many truths in the world. Like, you can keep on talking. There'll be no end to the truths you can talk. That's not how what is meant here. So when an occasion demands that you say something, avoid telling the untruth. Otherwise, you can keep quiet, but don't tell the untruth. That is satyam. And we in Sanskrit there is also a vachanam, shloka that says satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat. So that means even when you tell the truth, you are supposed to convey the truth in a palatable, pleasant manner. Sometimes the truth that you say may not be acceptable or enjoyable to the person listening to it. Let's say you are giving some feedback, and feedback is always unpleasant. Yeah, and there could be a lot of truth in what you may be saying, but that has to be couched in a language that is not going to be hurtful. So satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat. You say that in such a way that the person receiving the feedback or truth doesn't feel hurt. Yeah, on a lighter note, somebody says this, a politician is one who describes the hell so beautifully that the person listening to it will want to go to hell. Okay, so that's another extreme of how to sweeten things, but we are not talking about that here. We are talking about truth being conveyed in a unhurtful manner. Okay, that is satyam. Then akrodhaha. Akrodhaha, we have another virtue coming later, which is shantihi. So let us take the two together, akrodhaha and shantihi. Not shanti, even kshama. Basically, there are three virtues: akrodhaha, shanti, and kshama. They are all very closely related. So akrodhaha means avoidance of anger. Akrodhaha means avoidance of anger. Shantihi is keeping a peaceful, balanced mind. And kshama, or in some context it is called titiksha. Kshama, titiksha, shanti, these are the words. The word shanti and kshanti, they sound similar, but they're slightly different in meaning. So shanti, kshama, these are all also some kind of a absence of reaction to provocation. Let me put it this way. So when you are provoked, you don't react violently. You try to keep a certain calmness. And kshanti or kshama also has the meaning of forgiveness. So all these, they belong together. So the acharyas make a very fine distinction. So akrodhaha is to manage the anger that has been triggered. So something happens and that event triggers an anger in you, and how do you handle that anger? Before you blurt out something in terms of words, or before you show any physical reaction, how do you handle that anger within your mind, and how do you process that anger? Because the anger emotion is also some kind of an indication that you are not comfortable with something. Your internal discomfort is what gets expressed as anger. So even when you are aware that the anger is rising, you try to filter it or hold it back and try to analyze it and ask yourself, what is this that is making me angry? Why am I angry? How can I then how can I express my feeling without being violent. So this kind of an internal processing of an anger that has already been triggered is akrodaha, whereas shanti is to make sure that the anger doesn't come at all. So there's a subtle difference. So even as the event that triggers, that can potentially trigger your anger is happening, how do you insulate your mind from that event not affecting you and not causing you anger? So that is shanti. So that's a fine distinction that we make. But for the common man who is not so good at anger management, all this may look like very theoretical talk. Yeah, because most of us do get triggered with anger quite easily. In some cases, some trigger may be very effective. In some other cases, some other trigger may be effective. But we all feel anger more or less on a regular basis for something or the other. So how do you manage that anger? How do you make sure that the events happening do not affect you and cause anger in you, and keep your mind in a balanced state? That is shanti. And of course, the kshama, we did talk about kshama under the topic of shanti in the last week's list. In the last week's list, shanti was number 4. Amanitvam, adambhitvam, ahimsa, kshanti. Okay, so these are all some repetitions. Arjavam is a repetition, ahimsa is a repetition, then kshanti, kshama is a repetition. Yeah. So tyagaha. So we'll do tyagaha and then we'll do the rest of the list next week. Yeah, because it's a fairly long list and we are already 45 minutes. So I thought somebody might have some questions, discussion. So I'll leave some time for that. So we'll talk about tyagaha and then the rest of the list we will continue next week. So what is tyagaha? So tyagaha, very simply translated, is sannyasa or renunciation. Okay, sannyasa or renunciation. But then we are not really talking about formal sannyasa, formally leaving the family and world and going to the some kind of a matham and becoming a sannyasi of some order or not. That's a much later stage. Initially, developing an attitude that I really possess nothing and whatever I think I possess are basically things given to me as a trustee. So that sense of trusteeship, you develop a certain sense of trusteeship towards all your possessions and reduce the kind of emotional attachment or obsession that you may have towards your possessions. That is tyagaha. And this is also very closely connected to the dhanam virtue that we talked about earlier, because the more you develop the tyaga attitude, the trusteeship attitude, that you really don't possess anything but it's all in your custody as a trustee, it becomes that much more easy for you to part with your possessions within quote, yeah, and share it with others. So this tyagaha is in some way a kind of a preparation for dhanam, and these two can reinforce each other. As I said, ultimately even this body is not ours. After 70, 80, 90, whatever years, when the life comes to an end, we have to even give up this body. So if that attitude is developed even from a much younger age, then it puts everything in a perspective and we are able to deal with our life's ups and downs in a fairly balanced way. Yeah, so that is tyagaha. And we already covered shanti combined with akrodha and kshama. So I'll stop here for today, and if there are any questions, we can do a discussion for perhaps 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on what kind of discussions we have. Okay. The silence is intriguing. Okay, at least if you have no questions, you can let me know there are no questions, so that I can probably cover a few more qualities in the remaining time, or we can call it a day for today and close the call. Either way, so somebody has to talk, please. Yeah, Shubhuji.
I think it is fairly understandable, easily understandable, because these are basically um, all the godly qualities or all the divine qualities that are on the good side of things, and you have explained them well. And I think there is no, I don't feel there is any controversy in it.
No, your voice was cracking. You
No,
need to repeat that.
I'm sorry. I don't think there is any controversy for questions, because they were
Okay.
finely explained, and they are basically the divine qualities that everyone should try and strive for. So
Yeah,
I don't think this,
correct.
like earlier on we had questions regarding the um, what was recited to us, or what was told to us in the Vedantas, but this is basically uh, a, a collection of qualities that are good. No,
Correct.
so there
So
is.
these are basically ideals that one has to strive towards, and you may not be able to develop all the qualities to the full extent, but it's a continuous process, and one keeps on attempting to refine oneself in one or the other dimension, and see how far you go with it. Yeah, it's not just even one lifelong process. It will take several lifetimes for a person to develop a good measure of all these qualities. So in that sense, it's a much bigger project than one would imagine. Yeah. So
Now I do
Shubhuji.
have a question.
Yeah.
um, I mean, these are all qualities that you should need to strive for, but sometimes, like fearlessness is a good thing, but it is very difficult to achieve when there is something that you are really afraid of. That is on the one side, and then if you say you have to perform sacrifice, also self-sacrifice, that may even harm you physically, that I find a bit of a controversy. Because how can you be fearless on the one side and then still say, I'm going to go through this tapasya and do this and this ritual because this is going to bring me further on in life, and I'm still going to be fearless about it? You you are you are how can I say, you are basically forcefully putting yourself in a position where you should feel some kind of fear. That is the natural thing. You should feel afraid of, I don't know, walking barefoot through the jungle and thinking the snakes are going to come after you or whatever. You can't just trust.
Okay.
The feeling is you can't just trust in that everything will be all right because I am praying to God. So that is the the
See,
way we
okay,
see the
let
world,
me
of course.
clarify. Let me clarify. So when we say tapaha, tapaha, putting yourself through some discomfiture, it is not to put yourself in some kind of a life-threatening situation. Okay, so we are not going to be fighting with tigers or playing with cobras or anything. That's not the vratam we are talking about. Let's say, forget about vratam and all that. People go to Everest. They climb the Everest with a sense of adventure. Yeah. So definitely, you need a lot of courage to even think of doing that. Yeah. Whether you manage to do it is a different thing, because when a lot of people go to Everest, a lot of people come back after the base camp itself. The base camp is at 5,000 feet, and you have to spend a month or month and a half at the base camp in preparation before you start climbing. And I'm told more than 50% of the people come back after they attend the base camp itself. Okay, so that clearly shows that even for such a simple thing like spending 1 month at the 5,000 feet elevation requires a lot of physical endurance, mental toughness, and a certain abhayam, so to say. And it is physically an enduring endurance test kind of thing. But there, we are not talking about the danger of dying. I'm not going to that extreme, but to even think of, forget about all that. Even Everest is a very extreme example. Performing a 24-hour fast on Ekadashi day or Shivratri day, a lot of people can't. Like, for instance, I cannot do a 24-hour fasting. Why go here and there? So I may do so many things, but 24-hour fasting is something I cannot do because I know my limitations. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, there are some of these qualities where you may already have a sweet spot, where you don't have to strive to do anything. There may be some other quality which you may never want to acquire at all, and there may be some qualities which you may want to develop. So focus on those qualities which you want to develop. I'm not saying all these are compulsory for everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But these are a broad set of qualities which are going to be eventually helpful in the pursuit of Vedanta. Now it is up to you to pick and choose what you want to pursue, what you don't want to pursue. Does it make sense?
It makes sense. Some of them are easier to achieve, let's say, than others. It is easier to give charity. It is easier to perform a study of the Vedas and try and live in simplicity, truthfulness, and so on. But it is more difficult to know how to be fearless. If you know something is coming up, or some
Okay.
whatever operation or something, and oh my goodness, this is going to leave me with
Right.
disabled or whatever. How do
Correct.
I get to that stage of fearlessness is a big hurdle. But
Good
other
question.
qualities that are written there, like gentleness, modesty, don't be covetous, aversion to fault finding in other people, freedom from, those are easier, in my eyes at least, easier to achieve, easier to strive for. Not maybe not to achieve, but strive for.
Sure.
Tranquility of mind. You have exercises that you can do. You can read certain texts that make your mind tranquil. But fearlessness is the first one, is the most difficult, I find. One of the most difficult parts.
Okay. Now let us take Abhayam. Since you brought up Abhayam as what you consider the most difficult, let us take Abhayam and dissect it a little bit more. Yeah. So, what is the worst thing that one would be afraid of? What is the very, very worst extreme case? What is it? Death?
Death, yes.
Death, probably.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, death. Now, why are people afraid of death? What is the reason behind? Yeah, Shwetambriji.
So because it's unknown what will happen after that, after I'm dead.
Okay, good point. It is unknown. There is a lot of black box kind of thing. You don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, Shubuji.
Also, the fact that you can't choose the way you die. You can't die in your sleep, and you can't, you may suffer terribly for the next 10 years. You may
Yeah.
have some kind of illness that leaves you disabled. You may be
Correct.
just a husk of yourself, and pain. I think
Correct.
the pain problem is, in my eyes at least, the most worse. If I'm going to suffer for 10 years in pain,
Yeah.
that is worse for me than just dying in 10 years,
Great.
of sleep or
Great.
whatever. No? Yeah.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So very, very legitimate answers. One, you don't know what's going to happen after death. The second, you may suffer for a long time. It will cause a lot of pain. Okay. Now, if you analyze these 2 points, both of them are connected to your body. Both of them are connected to your body. And in the first 6 or 7 weeks, we went through a lot of analysis and eventually said that we are not the body. Okay, we are not even our mind. And if you have understood and assimilated that point, that your true identity is not your body, then a lot of, shall we say, emotional connect, even in terms of fear or insecurity surrounding the body, should be coming down gradually. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that if I get hurt today, I'll not cry at all. No, I'll profusely cry and shed tears and all that, but that will be for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Okay, but after that, once the pain is kind of brought under control, I have to then cool myself down and say, theek hai, ho gaya hai, now I'll live with it. Okay, so there is a very elaborate set of philosophies that we have around the body, mind, and connection, where we are always working at telling the individual that try to reduce the attachment to the body. Now, in the Upanishads, the exact death mechanism is described in a very clear way. When the Ajnani dies, when the Ajnani is one who doesn't know the Vedantic truth, when he dies, it is only the physical body, the Annamaya kosha, that is left behind. The other 4 koshas travel to another body. So in that sense, death is not the destruction of the individual. That we have to understand. Death is not the destruction of the individual. Death is just a transfer of the individual from one container to another container. If you understand this truth and assimilate it and integrate it into your thought process, gradually, over some months or years, you can get rid of a lot of fears. And you can get rid of the fear of death also. Okay, so the first point about death being an unknown thing is straight away addressed in the Upanishads. Okay, of course, you don't know what the next Janma is going to be. That's a different unknown. Okay, but the known certainty is that you as an individual will simply move on to another body. Okay, and you can relate to this experience even on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to die to experience it. When you are awake, you are dealing with this body in a particular environment in this world. But when you go to sleep and in your dream body, you are in a completely different world. For the next 1 week, until you come to the next Tuesday session, I would request all of you to take this small exercise. Every morning, once you wake up, you try to recollect what kind of dream you had. Yeah, and make a short note, maybe half a page or 3-4 sentences, what kind of a dream you had. It will be very difficult to remember. You may not remember all the details, but you will remember some kind of a sketchy memory you may have. Try to note it down and then compare it to the waking world that you experience. These two are totally different. You will not have a dream world which is in any way connected to your current living environment. And that is the dream part. And in the deep sleep part, you have no identification, no knowledge of where you are. Whether you are sitting, whether you're sleeping in a train, or whether you're sleeping in a flight, or whether you're sleeping in a bed in your bedroom, or in some hotel, or in some friend's house, you will have no idea. Only when you wake up, you know you are in this and this place. So that means you are able to exist even on a day-to-day basis without any connection to this body. And death is just a simple extension of that experience. That's all. Yeah. And once you understand the actual relationship between your true self and your body, both of these fears about death will reduce. It won't reduce immediately from today to tomorrow, but it will reduce over a fairly gradual period. In a few months, in a few years, you will get rid of that fear. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sounds convincing, or you still have some question marks?
No, sounds very convincing. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think we will stop here unless anyone else has a question. Yeah, let's go around. No more questions. Anyone?
Sir, I have a question, but I will ask it next time so that we can end on time. It's somewhat similar to what Shubhu asked, but it's about two different qualities.
Okay, you can tell me the question, but I won't answer. And you
Okay.
remember the question next week and repeat it. Yeah, so that I know if I have to prepare an answer, I'll know what to do.
It's related to what you said about Danam and Tyaga. So essentially, you said that Tyaga is to give up material possessions, right? Like to basically develop the quality that nothing you own is actually yours. Correct?
Yeah.
I think this is what you said.
Yeah.
And Danam is to give it to someone else, probably somebody in need. So then my question is, this seems a little contradictory in the sense, why would that person also need it? If they develop this quality of Tyaga, why would they need it, whatever you're trying to give them?
Correct. Very, very fair question. So let's take it up for next class, but please remember to ask the question in the same language. Yeah, so that,
Okay.
yeah, just note it down somewhere and remember to ask for. So next class, we will first begin with this discussion and then move on to the next virtue, which is apaishunam. Okay. We'll start with apaishunam, but after the discussion on this question. Okay. Great. Right. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Sarvesham Swastirбhavatu Sarvesham Shantirbhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarvepi Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Namaste.